Hello and welcome to another episode of the MiamiHal Real Estate Show. Every single week, I've got a great guest in that chair right there. No exception this week either. And we are talking to the vice mayor of Palmetto Bay. We'll get to that in a moment, but I do want to tell you that I booked Mark to come on and talk to us about what's going on with his first term in the Palmetto Bay Council about a month ago. But there's been a couple of things that have transpired since that are going to make this show a little bit more exciting.
Absolutely.
But we are going to start, and you just told me about this, with a somber note. There's some news from FSU, right?
Yeah, so I just read in the news that there was a mass shooting at FSU, and when these sort of things happen, I mean, I can't even imagine being a student or a parent or a friend of someone who goes there, and I know a couple of people there as well, and it's horrible seeing that in the news, and my thoughts are with you, and obviously we'll be monitoring the situation as it develops.
Yeah, it's always difficult to hear that, and I'll just say a few words. What bothers me about situations like this, obviously the event itself, but unfortunately in this country, we tend to also be polarized on a political scale in our reactions and our words about this. And I do hope that hopefully this time we focus on the people that have been affected and we say healing, helpful things rather than hurtful things.
Absolutely.
But we move on.
Yes.
So, Mark, I have been following you for quite some time, well before you became a part of the Palmetto Bay Council and vice mayor. And you really are a very interesting and incredible person, because at a very young age, you decided that, there were causes that needed to be fought for.
Absolutely.
And we did a video, God, it's 10 years ago, I think, maybe something like that. Maybe it's not quite.
I think it was 2015. Yeah,
10 years ago. I got it right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I just realized again, it's 2025. Like, wow, time flies. But
the video was you and some other folks driving around a traffic circle in Palmetto Bay.
Yes.
Teaching people about how to use a traffic circle in the proper manner.
Mm-hmm.
And here you were a little snot-nosed kid teaching adults and others about this. So tell me a little bit why on that particular day, the then mayor had brought you out to do that, and what you did around that general driving topic.
Yeah, I mean, way back when when those circles were being built, I think at the time we were unveiling a brand new circle in Palmetto Bay. Yeah. And one of the top concerns that we still get to this day, 10 years later, is no one knows how to use these traffic circles because people don't know how to drive here, which valid point. People here just cannot drive to save their lives. But what I'll just say is it takes a lot of community education to get people used to any kind of change in any community, especially with traffic flow or anything else. So yeah, back in 2015, I was learning how to drive. I had my driver's permit. And we thought it'd be a fun idea to come out to those traffic circles and teach everyone else, as I was learning personally how to get around the traffic circles. And I don't know if you still have that video, but it was just a fun spirited way of trying to educate the public as to, hey, if you're approaching a roundabout, don't freak out. It's not actually that complicated.
Right.
Obviously in Palmetto Bay, we're seeing a lot more roundabouts pop up, especially on county-owned roads like Old Cutler. Those are a little bit more complicated, and maybe one day we'll come back out 10 years later. We'll do an anniversary where we teach people how to use those double lane circles that are coming up everywhere. So
exactly,
it could be a fun thing.
We've upgraded to 2 lanes, so we're twice as confused.
Exactly.
But my point was, you were passionate about that then, and another project which became a pet project, which ultimately launched you into the kind of this arena of politics, I think, is texting and driving.
Yes.
In the state of Florida. So it wasn't localized to down here. Tell me very briefly about your campaign and what the results were.
Yeah. So way back when I was 16 years old, I was also at the time, same thing, still learning how to drive. And I was coming home from lunch with my grandmother who lived in Miami Beach at the time. We were driving down the MacArthur Causeway. I'd look left and see people just buried, their head buried completely, not paying attention to the road, going 50 miles an hour. Look to my right, exact same thing. And Getting home that day took like over an hour and a half because of the car crashes we kept constantly passing. I was just thinking to myself, what is someone doing about this problem that is so glaringly obvious to basically everyone who lives in Miami, which is no one can get off their phone. So I had a lot of frustration as a 16-year-old going, well, what do we need to do about it? So I sent out like 1,000,001 emails to our local commissioners, our local mayors, and everyone else saying, hey, we have to work on this together.
Right.
To me, it's important. And this is my advice to anyone who wants to get involved in politics. You have to come out with a solution, and you also have to be very passionate about the work you want to do. And government has this habit, unfortunately, of trying to grind people down and try and get people to give up in fights. This took 3 years. 3 years to get something simple as texting and driving banned. And now, right now in this legislative session, so there's about 2 weeks left in Tallahassee before all of our lawmakers go home for the year. There's another bill right now that would take this whole thing a step further and do a complete handheld ban on distracted driving in Florida. And this Florida Senate, which is one of the two bodies, just like Congress, we have the House and the Senate. The Florida Senate overwhelmingly passed a bill to do just that. Unfortunately, it's currently being held up in the House. I saw a story 2 or 3 nights ago from a mother who lost her son while he was doing a fundraiser for Bike and Build, who was killed by a distracted driver. And just hearing those stories every single day is just unbelievable. And there's people behind everything that we do. And that's what politics is ultimately. We're here to serve the people. We're here to serve the residents, keep people safe as a number one priority, and provide the services that we need to have a high quality of life. And we really need to take that legislation hopefully seriously. And hopefully this year, if the House Speaker decides to put this on the floor, we can get it done this year. But personally, I think it's going to take a little bit more effort next year. And it shouldn't have to, though. That's politics for you. But we have to keep fighting. And that's the sort of thing that brought me into this seat where I am today, is I'm not one to give up easily or scare easily. So here we are.
All right. So we had an election for Palmetto Bay, and this is your first term in office, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a historic election. I know every politician who wins an election likes to go around saying, my election was historic, it was huge, it was an amazing thing. But let me put this like on paper for you, what actually happened. Palmetto Bay voters, not me, it was the voters ultimately, unseated a 4-year incumbent backed by the village mayor, county mayor, several other establishment figures across Miami-Dade County. You look at the endorsement flyer of the opponent who I defeated, it was like a whole list of people who were backing this person. And at the time I was 24, I'm now 25, to do that. And it was the voters who ultimately put me in this position, because ultimately I think people felt this need for change and a fresh idea of what it means to be a Palmetto Bay resident. And every single day I walk into those council meetings, I'm carrying that message that those voters sent, which is we need to have change in this community. And unfortunately, obviously, we'll get to it in a second, people are not happy with change, because change is obviously difficult for some people who are currently comfortable with the status quo.
Right. And we hear that everywhere in life. People that are okay with what we have now, so why change? And there's obviously contingent that will fight change as well. You fight for change, they fight change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What I'll just say is change in general is going to happen whether or not you like it. I mean, our traffic in Palmetto Bay has gotten worse over the years. We're at historic levels of traffic because of the overbuilding and overdevelopment in South Dade. We're facing huge amounts of trust issues within Palmetto Bay, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes, hopefully later in the show. And I think voters just felt this appetite of we need new leadership in Palmetto Bay. And I'm grateful to be in that position to help deliver that. And so far, it's been an amazing experience just on the traffic point alone and trying to bring that new, fresh leadership. Some residents reached out to me who were absolutely getting pummeled every single day from a cut-through issue in Palmetto Bay. It was on 173rd. And they were telling me, like, I can't even walk out to my mailbox because the cars would just fly right by me. I mean, I think people should be able to check the mail. I mean, I think, and that was a change that came without anything. It's because no one was acting to try and prevent that sort of thing from happening or planning for that future. And now here we are, we're able to, because I was in office and because I was able to help these residents out, we now have a lot more attentive of a government, and they're now hopefully in the pipeline soon to get a crosswalk to cross Old Cutler safely. Their street now has a lot of speed bumps. I know people don't like them, but the residents, they're the ones who ultimately control that street in my view. They need to be able to have a safe way to get to their mailbox. And it's just being able to deliver those positive changes in the community incrementally and also with people every step of the way.
When I booked you,
Mm-hmm.
I booked the vice mayor of Palmetto Bay to come on the show. And
Yes.
I said, I'm going to hear how your first couple of months in office are going. And I knew I was going to hear all about the fresh views that you have and what you were trying to do. But now I understand you might not be the vice mayor. And I'd like you to explain, because
Sure.
it is a very interesting, if not frustrating situation.
Well, the haters will say I'm not the vice mayor, as people my age like
How
to say.
can they do
The
that?
haters.
You were voted into
Yes.
office.
So what's happening right now is we have another person on the council right now who I've done nothing to. I've never said anything rude to him in my entire life. I've never did anything to upset this guy other than probably defeat an incumbent. But since I've been elected, this person has been trying to deny the fact that I am the vice mayor of Palmetto Bay with whatever standard they can come up with. Even before I got elected, when people were calling me vice mayor elect, he was going around saying, well, on a technicality, because the canvassing board did not qualify for rule 12E subsection 12F or some whatever random rule, he'd say, you're not technically vice mayor elect until that process happens. And since then, everything has been setting up to try and discredit me personally, and also more importantly, I think the voters in Palmetto Bay, the office and the council as a whole that works to serve you every single day from this one individual who's on our council as well. And what has happened, unfortunately, is when I took the oath of office, it was at the exact direction of our village attorney and our village clerk. And subsequent to that, this person, I guess, had a problem with the way I said 71 words. And now here we are, months later. It is now April 17th.
Yes.
And I was sworn in on the 9th. The village, unfortunately, had to spend over $6,000 of your tax dollars to confirm what we already knew, which is I was sworn into office. And that person who we hired is a very high-powered law firm. They're Ackerman. If you've ever been involved in any kind of highly complex litigation or anything else, Ackerman is the cream of the crop. They're really, really good attorneys. Unfortunately now, Ackerman's also on the witness list for this case, so they can't continue to represent the village in this matter. But to me, it's unfortunate because we have someone who is denying two licensed attorneys, one of which is our own city attorney, who this same person called one of the most qualified people in Florida to practice law or something similar to that. And they're also discounting the legal opinion of someone who's, again, extremely qualified, who has been a county attorney for the last, for decades before going into private practice. And here we are, despite those facts. And every single day, to me, it's an honor to continue to fight for you. I think that this is just a symptom of a broader problem, which is we have people who really don't want change in Palmetto Bay, which is to actually have a representation of the people. Think about this for a second, Hal. The complaint that this person has filed says that technically, because I have not taken a valid oath of office, that my predecessor is still the vice mayor. He has sent that to multiple residents and has continued to put that out in his own statements. Think about what that means. For the last 5 months, this person wants to invalidate all of the progress that we've made as a community together by having a judge do this.
And let's go back. There were 71 words. That's the controversy. And that is your oath, right?
Well, he's saying, well, technically, because a county commissioner swore me in, by the way, Commissioner Cohen-Higgins was the one who swore me in, because she's technically not a notary and because she's technically not this, or this, that she wasn't qualified to swear me in. Discounting the fact that about the same distance we're sitting right now was the village clerk, who is a notary and was the exact same person who swore in this person who's filing the claim. And the law says, as long as you're before someone who's qualified, you're good. And that's exactly what our licensed attorney had said. It's exactly what a $6,000 legal opinion had said. And yet here we are 5 months later. And it's just, to me, what's unfortunate about this is I think that when we're approaching other people, for example, if we ever want to ask for grants, I know right now in Tallahassee, we're asking for money for a sub-basin project and also a safe streets project. They look at the politics of what we're dealing with and they're like, the hell is wrong with you all? And the same thing it's our reputation as well with the county. It's our reputation with our peer cities. And unfortunately, what I've seen since this lawsuit has been filed is a lack of leadership in standing up to this from my colleagues, except for obviously Councilwoman Marsha Matson, who has been an absolute warrior for the people. But I'll give you an example. Our village mayor, Mayor Karen Cunningham, was asked about this from a resident, and the resident forwarded me the response. I didn't ask for that, by the way, because I know there's some sunshine implications there, but it was still sent to my email box. And what the response basically said was, what are you looking at me for? That's between Steve Cody and the council. Never mind the fact that ultimately it's going to be the taxpayers who ultimately are going to have to pay for this, whether it be through higher insurance rates or directly to my attorney who I've had to hire here, and also the village's own attorney as well, because he also, in his lawsuit, disqualified the city attorney from representing the village on this. So there's a taxpayer issue here directly involved in this. There is a fact that the very credibility of this entire dais and this council is coming up for question. And we have our mayor who's running away from this. And also, by the way, on video in one of our previous council meetings, said, I don't know if Mark Merwitzer is sworn in or not. I can't answer that question. The very next meeting, I did her a favor and I said, Mr. Attorney, am I properly sworn in? Yes. And to this day, she has not said Mark Merwitzer is properly sworn in. It's just so unfortunate seeing the lack of leadership from other people on this. And also there's some other colleagues who even encourage this to happen. Like, oh, if you don't want us to support this, you should just go to court. So look, I will continue fighting for the residents every single day, regardless of this lawsuit. And here we are. And it is an absolute honor to continue to serve. And I think the courts will ultimately see this for what it is. And I cannot wait for this thing to be over, because I want to get back to the real work. And I think there's some major issues like the pickleball arena that I want to talk to you about, and a couple of other things that are so, so important.
We're going to get there, except I'm going to ask for a 2-shot, because we are now, by the power of the show, going to remove the commas from the titles that we're going to display for the rest of the show. You are now not vice mayor, you are vice mayor.
I hope the court is watching this.
It's official, folks.
There we are.
Listen, we have to have some humor, because as some people recently said to me, this is ruining Palmetto Bay.
Yeah.
What ultimately is a trivial, almost humorous issue is stopping you and others from looking at the real issues in Palmetto Bay and working on them.
Yeah.
So you were about to bring up some issues in Palmetto Bay that you are passionate about. So let's get to those.
Yeah. So right now, the number one thing that concerns me in Palmetto Bay is this quote unquote unsolicited proposal to use taxpayer funds to build a pickleball arena across from Village Hall on the same land that the village acquired many, many years ago under some circumstances that I won't get into. But here we are many years later, and on that exact same land, which by the way was partly the basis as to why some people were able to unseat incumbents before, they now want to turn over to a private for-profit company and say, here's some land for you right across from Village Hall. We will build you with $1.6 million from our fiscal reserves, which, by the way, for those who aren't familiar with government talk, fiscal reserves just means rainy day fund. And that just means that if there's ever a financial emergency, which we're in some very uncertain times, I'm sure you know as a real estate person.
Yes.
That money is set aside to protect our law enforcement and also to make sure that we're safe in the event of a hurricane and can rebuild quickly. We want to spend $1.6 million from that emergency fund for a private company to have them have a arena right across from Village Hall for people to have pickleball tournaments and everything else. Look, I got nothing against pickleball. I got nothing against this company. I have everything against using taxpayer funds that are meant to protect our law enforcement and our men and women in blue for ultimately a game.
You hear this almost at a much larger scale when cities will spend, millions and millions of dollars to build stadiums for football teams or baseball teams. This is our own little version of this in Palmetto Bay.
Pretty much. No, it's almost identical. It's actually worse. So here's the thing.
Tell me why it's worse.
So with all the other controversies, there wasn't really a lot of behind the scenes negotiation before this went public. The public had a pretty good idea as to what was going on long before this was voted on. This private company has been in contact with the village of Palmetto Bay since September. And when I tell you that our people in our parks department were discussing the cost of the steel that they would use for the building and the exact specifications that the village of Palmetto Bay wanted for this company, I mean, that's just like textbook. Let's collude with this private for-profit company to give them exactly what we want, what they want, so that we can then open up our coffers to pay them $1.6 million. No negotiation with the public, no discussion with our residents who live right across from that facility. And now here we are saying we have an unsolicited proposal. Others, of course, can come and bid on this, but who's going to seriously bid on something when the other guy who's bidding on this
already done
is like already pretty much at the finish line and has to cross over. Right. So how's that a fair process? And to me, it just seems on a number of fronts that we're trying to do backroom. And to me, I believe this is a corrupt deal. That's how I see it. It's a corrupt deal.
So besides all the things you mentioned, and it seems like that's enough, $1.6 million is a significant figure.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if you are understanding how long it would take for the village to recoup the $1.6 million and potentially benefit from it beyond that.
Well, think about this from the perspective of residents. Last fiscal year or last year when we decided to do our budget, we were talking about, well, how do we make sure we have enough money for our services? And we had one council member, actually two council members, who said, let's just go back to keeping the tax rate exactly as it was last year. And the whole argument that we heard from the administration and that we heard from other council members was, no, we can't do that. We have to raise taxes on our residents because how are we going to fund our services? Now, here we are in the exact same budget year, turning around and going, we suddenly have $1.6 million for this private company to come in. From the perspective of residents, the people who I want to fight for every single day, like that doesn't jive. And next year, obviously, we're coming up on another really intense budget year because obviously there's a lot of question as to what the economy is going to look like. I am personally, if we can afford $1.6 million for a private pickleball arena, I'm not in favor of raising our taxes. One single penny.
Understood. There are some other issues that you and the council are working on as well. Tell me what your projects are and your passions are to try to put your stamp on your office and to move the village forward.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm very passionate about is trying to get our tree canopy, which for those who don't know, it's just a measure of how many trees that we have in Palmetto Bay. I'm sure that you know as a real estate person that curb appeal is one of the most important things that you can have in real estate. Having a nice lush tree canopy within Palmetto Bay would give us so many different benefits, but obviously the first one is it's amazing for property values. You want to live in an area that's well shaded. We have probably about a week or two before it starts getting really, really hot outside. And it's a good reminder that we have to find ways to shade people in Palmetto Bay. So one of the things that I've been able to do is I got onto the tree board as the liaison, and I'm working actively with those members of that tree board to try and work out some kind of plan so that we can hit getting at least 1,000 trees planted during my term. I want to do way more than that. And go from there. But to me, it's just so important that we find ways to safeguard our environment, safeguard our future, because obviously it's only going to get hotter in Miami in the foreseeable future.
And one of the things I know of Palmetto Bay is when you're driving around the communities in and around Miami, when you drive into Palmetto Bay, you feel the difference, and it is the tree canopy and the green that does it. So I think that's a great place to spend some effort and make sure that we continue to have even lusher areas of Palmetto Bay. Let's talk about traffic. And I have been driving through Palmetto Bay for years, and within the last couple of days, I've done several drives through Palmetto Bay, and there's a lot of construction going on, and they're mostly related to traffic circles, new traffic circles.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of those.
Well, hopefully one day we'll be able to do a video again as to how we...
It's called Full Circle.
Yeah.
Oh, Full Circle.
There we go.
In our conversation.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's going to take some work from our village to start educating people as to how to properly use those. But also more importantly, it's really important to me that we find ways of getting people out of their cars, not forcing them, but giving them the choice that they need to get around Palmetto Bay. I'll tell you, in the summertime, we're approaching summer break, thankfully, which is going to deliver some relief for our residents in traffic. But to me, it's unfortunate. I mean, every time I would talk to an older constituent, they'd say, back in my day, I walked to school. And I'm like, well, why don't we do that anymore? Why is it not safe for people to walk or bike to school? And to me, I want to find ways we can invest in getting safer routes to school for people. It's just, the more we can make it so our kids can be independent and make it so our parents don't have to drive their kid to every little thing, like from school to softball practice to piano lessons. The more we can make our kids independent, the less traffic we have for our residents. And more importantly, that's also investing in our future, because part of the reason why I have the drive that I do today is that I was fortunate enough to learn how to use transit at a very young age at 16. My high school was incredibly independent, where I can kind of do what I wanted between the hours of 7:20 and 11:50 in the middle of downtown Miami. I learned how to take care of myself. A lot of kids these days are kind of put in a high fence facility with windows, and they're expected to stay there for 8 hours a day. And like, to me, I want to invest in ways people can get outside more. And that also involves looking at other ways, like the woods across from one of our schools, which is a beautiful piece of property the county has leased us, and trying to invest in that as well. But to me, it's just finding ways to get parents to move parents to move their family safely across Palmetto Bay, because I think if it's safe enough, most parents would be willing to allow their kid to walk or bike to school.
So what's next on the Palmetto Bay docket that you would like to share your views on? What's coming up that's going to be voted on, and what's going to happen this summer? As you said, summer break, but that doesn't mean Public Works and other things aren't hard at work during that time, so that when kids do come back from school, there are some changes.
Yeah, so obviously the number one thing that I'm currently monitoring is this pickleball arena. If you're watching this, I really hope you all can come out to those meetings and voice your opinion on this one way or the other. I value civic engagement. Obviously, you know my stance on it. But to me, the other thing is trying to restore accountability to our government. One of the things that I saw very closely after I got elected was our city administration decided to unilaterally give council members a $400 a month car allowance, which, for those who don't know, that's basically a 40% pay increase to what we have today. The charter says we get $1,000 a month. I do a lot of work for the village. I put it in my account. I don't ever expect taxpayers to ever foot the bill for even higher salaries for me, because I knew what I was getting into when I ran for office. Unfortunately, what has happened is the village has decided, hey, let's give you all $400 a month. Now, how does that make sense to me? Because the number one obligation that we have as a council member is to attend 2 to 3 meetings a month, which Palmetto Bay, is 3 miles by 3 miles. The max you're really driving is about 5 miles to a meeting. So we're being paid $400 extra a month to go to a meeting 3 times a month. It doesn't make sense to me. It felt like a pay increase. So I want to bring transparency to that. I have on the next agenda an item to rescind that $400. I haven't taken a dime from that car allowance, and I will never do that, because obviously if we're having difficult conversations around our budget, we have to obviously leadership should start first by cutting back. So we'll see.
And it smacks a little bit strange to me that it's a car allowance, when what everybody runs around talking about is how do we get people out of cars and walking or using alternate modes of transportation.
Yeah,
so that's an interesting thing. Anything else that's top of your list?
No, not really. Obviously, a lot of residents have been getting text blasts. I don't know if you've received them.
Oh, from time to time, I see something. Yes.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the blast.
Yeah, the text blast. Yeah. So, right around the same time that I pushed to rescind a $200,000 dark money lobbyist contract from the village of Palmetto Bay, a dark money group started attacking me and making up all sorts of different things. Like, I want to develop a 200-acre USDA land, which I'm happy to get to in a second. But no way. There's absolutely zero chance I will ever approve that. And now here we are also getting text blast about how I'm some kind of paid lobbyist. I've never been paid a dime in my life to register to lobby someone. So, there's some dark money that's going after me, and I feel like that's to be expected when you're pushing up against the status quo. And it's really unfortunate that people want to put that out there, but it's part of politics. And I continue to fight for you every single day, regardless of what comes out.
New ideas get bruised and battered on their way, don't they?
It's part of the fun.
I'm going to give you a chance. We've got about a minute left in the show. Tell me how you're going to fight back against the dark money and the text messages. What should people really know?
Well, Part of it is coming on your show, explaining exactly everything that's going on in our village. And the other thing too that's important is transparency. I'm an open book. If anyone ever wants to reach out to me directly, my personal cell is 786-309-6743. Feel free to give me a call anytime, text. If I don't answer, leave a voicemail. I'll always get back to you. And it's really important that people are able to talk to their elected officials and hear their perspective. And again, if you have any questions, I'd rather people reach out to me than just harbor that doubt or that question in their mind, especially when I'm always open to answering any question from anyone.
That's great. Folks, my voice has just about lasted. I haven't been feeling well. Voice is now coming back, but I think you probably heard that during the show. Once again, Mark Merwitzer, our true vice mayor in Palmetto Bay. Once again, your phone number so people outside the broadcast can get in touch with you if they need to.
786-309-6743.
It's a great number.
Absolutely.
Ring it if you need something. Until next week, have a great week in real estate. See ya. Thanks.
Pleasure.